Welcome to the No Regrets Leadership Podcast, where leaders are empowered to equip and disciple men.
Welcome to the No Regrets Leadership Podcast. My name is Steve Sonderman, and I'll be your host for today. I'm so glad that you are taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. And our goal is to equip you as a leader of men to more effectively minister to the men in your sphere of influence. And so whether that's the men in your family, the men at work, your neighborhood, your club, the men in your small group or your church, we want to just spend some time giving you a couple nuggets on how you can more effectively be the life and love of Jesus to others. And so today, our special guest is Ron Sweet. And Ron has been with us before. Ron joined our team back in October of last year, and he's responsible for the area of church engagement. And what we've been doing these last few weeks is that, a little bit about a month ago, we had our leadership summit where we had leaders from all over the upper Midwest come in and join us for a couple days of training. And during that time, the guys on our staff, they led a number of breakout groups. Well, what we're doing on the podcast now is we're taking those topics and we're putting them into a podcast that's more maybe listenable, more easy to listen to and understand and gets right to the point. So this week we have Ron Sweet, and we're going to be talking about moving men from isolation to relationship. So, hey, Ron, great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Steve. Excited to talk about this topic today, and man, what a great time you and I had together at the Leadership Summit, and just getting to spend time with a whole bunch of guys who have a heart for men, a heart for discipleship, and want to see a difference made in their communities and their churches. And it was so great to be together.
It really was. It was really, I know for you, for me, one of the highlights of the year. Guys that were so hungry, and there was just so much networking and everyone learning from each other and no one being the expert. I just loved it. I wish it would have just gone on for days. Right.
Yeah, there's just such a sense of togetherness, and we're doing this together, and we're going to be a part of the same team. And it's just exciting what God's doing.
It is. And I'm really excited about taking those breakout topics and now doing podcasts on them, because I think it's a way for us to, just converse about these topics and really bring some application to where the guys are living.
Yeah, I think so too. And I know when, I did this at the summit, we just had some really great conversation happening around our table. So I think it's just something that has been on my heart for a while when it comes to, men and being lonely and moving men into relationship. And I think, we all struggle with that at times in our lives as men, that we struggle with loneliness, and how do we continue to take steps forward and become a part of friendship and community?
Yeah. Well, let's get in it. We're going to talk about moving men from isolation to relationship. And so let's start sort of with the problem and sort of where things are at, right? Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about about loneliness and how men are experiencing that and what that looks like.
Yeah, I told the guys at the summit, it doesn't take long to understand that there is a loneliness problem, especially among men. I know women struggle with it too, but men, you just do any kind of Google search now, and you can find all kinds of great research out there. Some of it's not so so exciting, or it's pretty eye-opening and kind of sad, actually. But according to the Survey Center on American Life, men's social circles are shrinking. It says 30 years ago, 55% of men reported having at least 6 close friends. And in 2021, it says that number was actually cut in half. So only 27% of men reported having a close circle of friends. And then another research said that only 15% of men, it says 15% of men claim that they actually have no close friends. So I just think it's so interesting, isn't it, Steve, that, here we are, we live in this digital world, this digital age where we have technology at our fingertips on our phones, and, you have Facebook and now X, which used to be Twitter and Instagram. And yet the more connected we are digitally, it seems like we've seen at the same time a drop socially, in times where people, and men in particular, are lonelier than ever. Yeah. So I just think that's so. I guess it's not surprising that we've traded the truth for a lie. We've substituted technology for real relationships.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so Ron, what do you think are some of the causes of that? I mean, those are drastic numbers.
Yeah.
Number of guys that are lonely, what's happened over the last 30 years, just the last few years. What's sort of underlying some of that?
Well, I think there's several things, and we had a really good discussion about this with some of the guys at the summit. But I would point to, I think, a couple things. One is, I think, just our culture in particular. We don't live in a world that encourages relationship or community. You look at, I was telling the guys, you look at movie heroes, and I love movies, and I love action movies, and I love the guy who's, sort of the loner, in movies, and he's the hero. You look at everybody from Rambo, Sylvester Stallone to, Denzel Washington in the Equalizer. He lives by himself. He's this kind of assassin, former CIA operative. You have Batman. You have Dirty Harry. Clint Eastwood's character. I mean, Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon, my favorite TV show on Amazon Prime, Bosch. He's a detective in LA, and he lives on the top of the city in this beautiful home, but he lives alone. He's a total loner. Like, so we kind of idolize these guys in our culture who are big, strong men, but yet they're totally empty on the inside, and they lack any kind of male, friendships. And I also think there's just a lack of vulnerability in our culture today. That men are maybe afraid to be judged if or made fun of if I'm too vulnerable, if I really share how I'm feeling or really share my struggles or really talk about, feeling lonely, I'm going to be, labeled as like a crybaby or whatever.
Yeah.
And, vulnerability in our culture kind of equals, weakness for a lot of guys. And I think there was a guy, I read an article by Boston Globe reporter Billy Baker, and he talks about just the process of how this often happens with men of, you get married, you start raising kids, you get really involved in your kids' sports like I did, you're coaching, your kids are playing club sports, and that sort of becomes sort of your circle of people that you hang out with, but you never really go deep with those people, even though you may sit in the stands next to them at a ball game. And you slowly start to drift away, kind of from real friendship. And then your kids get older and they grow up, and then you're like, oh man, who's left around? I don't have anybody.
Right. Yeah.
I've seen that in my own life.
Yeah. Me too. It is definitely a trend in real life scenario for so many of us as men. And I think, it's important for the guys that are listening to just be thinking about the fact that so many of the guys around them, they may seem really happy and connected, but they're not, and they really are lonely to the core. And they're looking for connection.
I mean, is the very part-time men's pastor at my church and doing men's ministry for years. I've come across so many guys over the years, Steve, and I know you have too, in conversations where they say things like, hey, I don't have any male friends, or my wife is my best friend, and she should be your best friend, right? But at the same time, we need a band of brothers. We need other men around us. And I meet so many guys who just don't have that. And it just breaks my heart, because every man needs to be surrounded by other men who are going to build him up, pray for him, encourage him, support him, and help him take steps closer to Christ.
Yeah. And I don't want to jump ahead. But boy, it's what we're all about as when we work with men in ministry to men. It's getting guys connected, helping build community, and it's not just keeping guys busy and having more events, but because of this is what guys are longing for. They're looking for this. And so as you're thinking about your ministry, to be thinking about how are we going to get them connected. But I know we're gonna get to that in a minute.
We talk, and that's why I love what we do, because we talk so much lately, especially about discipleship and how do we help men become disciples and disciple others. But relationships are often an overlooked part of discipleship. I think that most discipleship, right, happens in the context of friendship, of relationship. I mean, it's what Jesus did. He spent time with his disciples. They were actually friends.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just before we get on to the solution side of things, Ron, what are you seeing? What are you reading as far as the consequences of loneliness? How does this play out then in men's lives, and how is it affecting them as men?
I think there's a physical and a mental component of this. You can look online. There's all kinds of stats out there about, talking about how loneliness has an effect on your physical health, actually. I mean, people are more likely to die younger, suffer strokes and heart attacks if they're not in relationship with other people, if they don't have close friends. So there's definitely a physical component, but I think it's no wonder that we're also seeing a rise in mental health issues too, of people with the depression and suicide because of loneliness. They feel like they have no friends, and it's getting those statistics, unfortunately, like they're getting younger and younger. We're seeing teenagers who are facing this, who feel like they have a lack of community, a lack of friends, or somebody who really knows who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like in some ways is that all the social media that's going on, it just ramps it up. I mean, it makes it even worse because you can even, I think of teenagers and college kids. They see all their friends at a party or a get together, and why wasn't I invited, and why don't they want me? And but you know what? It also happens to 40, 50, and 60-year-olds too.
Oh,
Right?
for sure. Yeah. I
You know,
mean, nowadays with technology, like you said, you can actually with and I have, kids in their 20s and late, one who's still a late teenager who's almost 18, and with like Snapchat maps now, they can see like where people are gathered together, and that just makes it even worse. In the old days when you and I were growing up, it's like we didn't know where people were. You just picked up the phone and called somebody, and if people were hanging out somewhere else, you never knew about it. But
right.
now you do.
We just figured everyone else was home just like us, right? I mean, we didn't know any better.
Right. It's easy to go back when I was a teenager,
Right.
but the truth is, I mean, it was a lot simpler time because you just picked up the phone and asked somebody to go hang out or to go do something.
Yeah.
And it's just not that way anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think, it was just in the last year, maybe 6 months ago, where the Surgeon General for the United States did say that, the number one illness in the United States is mental illness. It's loneliness. And so it is. It's affecting so many guys, and so let's get on the solution side of things. What are some things that a church can do, that a leader can do, to help in this situation?
Yeah, I'm part of the church, and I go, most weekends with my family, and I'm still, 10 hours a week in my church. And, I really feel strongly that the church, and I think our church struggles with this, and I think every church struggles with this about, what do we do as the church? Like we can't make people become friends. It's not a robotic thing where it's like, I'm going to pair you up and you must be friends with this person. That often doesn't work very well. But I do think the church, Steve, has a responsibility to set the table for community, for relationships to happen. Now it's up to us as individuals, as humans, to make an effort, right? To show up to those things, to say hi to somebody, to start a conversation, to maybe start towards the path of friendship. But if the church doesn't set, an environment or set the table for those kind of relationships and community to happen, then I think the church has really failed.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful to be a part of the church. I think our church is always trying to figure that out. Like, how do we do a better job of creating these communities? And when it comes to men's ministry, I feel a tremendous weight of providing small groups, because that for us, our church, that's kind of our model is groups. And I feel a tremendous responsibility to invest in our leaders, to start new groups, to make sure that when a guy comes to our church, there's a pathway for him to find those kind of male friendships, to find a group of guys that he can start to meet with and hopefully become friends with, become brothers with.
I like the word environments, and how you talked about that ministry to men, part of it is creating those environments where guys can connect, and where they feel safe, where they're gonna, be doing things that they enjoy doing.
How many times have you wanted to impact your world for Christ, but struggled to take the first step? Well, you are not alone. Our latest resource, Disciple Maker 101, is designed to help you become a disciple who makes disciples. This self-paced online course will provide you with practical tools to help you identify men in your sphere of influence, equip you to share your faith story, and practical tips to invest in the life of others by leading a small group. To become a disciple maker, visit noregretsmen.org. Again, that's noregretsmen.org, and click on Become a Disciple Maker.
I mean, Sunday morning is nice, but it's, Sunday morning is usually in and out. You're trying to pick up your
That's
kids,
right.
trying to find your kids. You're trying not to fight with your wife, and it's a hard place.
I'm smiling and laughing as you say that, because I've experienced that firsthand. I'm part of a big church, and I think we do a good job of trying. We try in the weekend services to get people to meet each other, but
Right.
it's really difficult. I mean, we
It
do
is.
this all the time on the weekends where it's like turn to your neighbor, talk to each other. Some people will do it, but there's a lot of people who they avoid their neighbor like the plague, sitting
Right.
next to them because it's uncomfortable, and it's just hard to make those kind of friendships
Right.
in a 20-second, 30-second interaction in the middle of a big church service. So again, I think that's where we got to cast a compelling vision, I think, with men about what it means to be in community. And I'll just give you one example, and we don't do this perfectly at our church, and I haven't done it perfectly as the leader, but one of the things I think we did right years ago, Steve, and I think you and I have talked about this before, is we came up with this illustration of a bus, and we found a bunch of these toy Matchbox school buses. And how I got that idea was I was meeting with a friend of mine, Jacob, who's a former Major League pitcher, and he talked about when he got drafted into Major League Baseball, his dad, who was diagnosed with cancer and ended up passing away a little bit later, told him, he said, "Hey, as you go through life, Jacob, it's really important as a man to find other guys who can be on your bus with you, your friends who have your back, who pray for you, encourage you, are there for you when you need it. And it's also important that you in turn are on somebody else's bus, and the other guys know that you're for them as well." So that illustration hit me so hard, that we passed out a bunch of school buses to a bunch of our guys in our men's ministry. And there's guys today still text me pictures of their school bus sitting on their mantle, sitting on their desk at work. And I'll often get a text from a guy saying, "Hey, Ron, thanks for being on my bus. And thanks for, thanks. I'm on your bus. I'm for you." And man, as a man, that means the world to me, to know that there are other men out there that are on my bus. I mean, it's humbling. I'm so grateful. So I think, as men's leaders, we need to have a compelling vision for casting for the importance of community. And then in turn, though, it's not enough to just talk about it, right? You got to have vision without, steps involved is just a pipe dream. So, we got to cast a vision, but we also need intentional steps to get there. And that's why I love what we do, Steve, because we're constantly looking at ways to help get men, from the being in the stadium, in the stands, like at a No Regrets conference, to actually getting in on the field, getting into community and relationships. And that's where, like, the 6-week follow-up study is such a great thing that we do, because it is an intentional next step from going from the bigness of our conference to intentional community discipleship, where guys are in relationship with each other.
Yeah. And I think that's key. Well, I love everything you're saying. I love the bus analogy. And, I know Ron does ministry with an open hand. And so, guys, if you're listening to this, just go out and buy a bunch of buses and do it, because it just is such a great visual of what the Christian life is all about. And I know I've heard your guys talking about it, and I know you've talked about it, and I've seen your bus on your desk at work. And so it just, something like that is such a good thing, because I think, growing up, guys love that idea of being on something together. You think of all the sports teams, right? What do we talk about? We talk about the teams we were on, because it was not so much the wins and losses, it was the camaraderie. And then you go off to college, and maybe it's an athletic team, but oftentimes it's a fraternity, or it's an apartment that you with the guys type thing. And it's that together thing that guys love, because we're made for community. But then as you get older, you lose it. You don't have that place.
Exactly. Those are such great examples you just gave, Steve. And it's true that you get into adulthood and you get married and you start having kids. And you don't have that thing anymore, right? You don't have
Right.
that team. You don't have that fraternity anymore, that brotherhood, and
Mhm.
life gets busy and you start doing and you start taking steps away from a community, and it really takes all of us. I love the word intentional, and it's
Yeah.
probably overused at times, but it really means all of us being intentional about taking steps to get back into community, to find that brotherhood again, because it's not going to just happen. You're going to snap your fingers and suddenly you're going to have friends. Like all of us, it takes work, it takes time to
Mhm.
build relationships. And so again, the church and our ministries, we can help set that table, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's up to men, up to all of us to take steps to find those kind of relationships.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Oh, I love it. So it's you want to provide that compelling vision is the first thing I heard of, just the importance. We're made for friendship and the idea of the bus and being together. And then the second thing I heard was the intentionality. I love that word of taking the initiative to create those environments where guys can get together. And that might be a large group type activity or it may be an event. It might be the follow-up study where it's maybe 5 to 8 guys. But that'd be a great place to start. And just for the listeners, we will put a link to the follow-up study in the show notes. So you can go there and learn more about it. But basically, it's a 6-week introductory Bible study. We write one every year to be used after the conference. And I think one of the cool things is, we had about 20,000 guys this year at the conference all over the country world. But right now, we've had almost 3 times the number of men go through the follow-up study as last year. And that's the goal, is to get guys connected, to continue that momentum. And so
right.
it's an easy tool that we can use. Ron, what else anything else that you would say that as a leader, as a man, we can do to move him from isolation to relationship?
I would say, I think the last thing, Steve, I would say if you're listening to this podcast and maybe you're the men's sort of point leader at your church, or maybe you're just a guy who's, attending church and you're not, maybe you don't even have a men's ministry at your church and you don't have anybody leading it. And I think it's just easy for us as men sometimes to sit back and say, well, let's let somebody else do it. Let's let somebody else figure out. And I think my challenge would be that if you need to model as a man what you want other men to experience. So I think my challenge would be, maybe God's calling you to start a small group, instead of waiting on the church to post a group online that you think would be a fit for you. Maybe you should get on the phone and invite, 5, 6, 7 other guys and say, hey, would you be interested in
Mhm.
starting a small group? Because I heard a great, quote from our friend Vince Miller, the other day. He said, all you need are 3 things. You need men, you need some kind of material to go through, and you need a meeting time and place, and that's it. So maybe it's just, you starting a small group of men, and I think you'll be surprised. I think my challenge would be, you'll be surprised at what God can do with that. You reach out, you make the personal ask. I'm always amazed at times in my life where I've done that. When I started my men's group several years ago, I just reached out to some guys and just said, hey, I'm doing this group. Would you be interested? And I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, of what God did with that. Like every guy said, yes, I'm in. I need this. And it's been so fun for me to be with this group of guys every Thursday morning and to see the text conversation that happens between us during the week. And sometimes it's absolutely, butt gusting, funny, guys laughing, making fun of each other. And other times it's serious and guys are taking screenshots of their devotionals they're reading during the day and they're sharing it with the group, and guys are sharing, very personal prayer requests, and we're really connected to each other throughout the week. So I think that would be my challenge, that maybe God's calling you to go start it. And maybe it's just starting with one group and just see how that can grow and multiply, over time, where now you're getting your needs met as a leader. You have accountability and guys in your life, but you're also now providing that for other men as well.
I think that's a great challenge, a great application to this whole thing. You're not going to be able to start with the whole church and everyone that comes Sunday morning. But like you said, start with 3 to 5 guys, sit down and have coffee with them, invite them to be a part of it. And I think you'll be surprised, like you said, that they're longing for this. The guys around you in your sphere of influence are longing for connection, for relationship. They may not know how to express it. They may not say it, but they are. And
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I are having those conversations now, Steve. I mean, I feel like I have that for me personally. I have a group of guys around me, who are in my life, but we don't really have a lot of other couples in our life. So Michelle and I are having that conversation right now about, we just talked about this the other day, like maybe we need to start like a couple small group in addition to the men's group that I'm leading to find like and for us, it's kind of like we're looking for maybe like other couples who, sort of have like college age kids that we can, sort of relate to. We're facing some of the same battles, but we come to that place of, gosh, we can't just sit back and wait for it to happen. Like we need to take initiative and maybe make it happen ourselves. So.
Well, I feel a preach coming on because we got the word initiative, we got the word intentional. We're starting with all eyes here. This is going to be great. We'll figure it out. But no, this has really been great stuff, Ron. Unfortunately we're out of time, but I think we hit the main things. And this has been so helpful. And this is such an issue and such an opportunity. I just see this as a huge opportunity for the church to step into, because they're not on the team, they're not in the frat anymore. And they're looking for that, something to be a part of, something bigger than themselves, where they're connected, where they're locking arms and they're making a difference together. And boy, the church is about that. Community relationship is all about that. So
just look around, man. Look around the people who are sitting by you at church on Sunday. Look around your neighborhood. Look around your workplace, because I guarantee there are people there who are looking for some of the same things you're looking for. They're all looking for community and friendship. And just because we're adults doesn't mean that we don't need friends. We need it just as bad as teenagers do, if not more.
For sure. Well, Ron, thanks again for all the time and effort you put into preparing this, for delivering it and leading the seminar at the summit. And I also want to thank all of our listeners. We're so glad that you're taking time just to listen and be a part of this. And, as we say every week, if we would encourage you to share this with other leaders. If there's other small group leaders at your church or a couple friends, maybe even some guys you want to invite to be in a small group, have them listen to this and say, hey, you know what? I heard this. I want to get something started, want to be a part of it. So
let us know how we can help, right? Because I mean, that's why we exist. And so, I would say the best thing, if you want to continue this conversation with me about this, about how you can continue to help the men in your life and in your community and in your church move towards relationship, let's continue the conversation. I would love for guys to email me, our suite at noregretsmen.org. And let's continue the conversation.
Super. Well, we'll put that in the show notes as well, and I hope that guys take you up on that, and you can just share some of the resources we have available to help to make that happen.
We don't have it all figured out as a ministry, right? Like we're going to learn from other people, so that you may be doing something in your church, in your community. Like share that with us. We'd love to hear about it.
You bet. So, all right, guys. Well, listen, on behalf of Ron and myself, we want to thank you again for listening, being a part of this, and we look forward to being with you next week.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for joining the No Regrets Leadership Podcast. For more information and to access past recordings, please visit www.menwithnoregrets.org/podcast.
Life Camp USA is a nonprofit organization that mentors young men who have lost a father due to military or law enforcement service. Life Camp USA provides an all-expenses-paid, week-long, world-class camp experience that inspires, equips, and navigates these fatherless young men through some of life's toughest moments. Life Camp USA's mentors serve grieving families by helping these sons establish healthy identities, values, character, and goals without the crucial aid of a father in their life. To learn more about Life Camp's mission, visit lifecampusa.org. Again, that's lifecampusa.org.